A dimly lit apartment hallway. The walls are old, with peeling wallpaper revealing something darker underneath. The air is heavy, thick with an unsettling silence. The sound of deep, labored breathing echoes from a room down the corridor. A woman, her face pale with terror, presses her back against the wall, clutching her chest. Her breathing is uneven. Something is inside the apartment with her. Something unseen, watching, waiting, and then, bam! The bedroom door slams shut on its own. The light bulb flickers wildly before bursting, plunging everything into darkness. A low whisper slithers through the room. You should have listened. A moving truck rumbles outside an aging but grand apartment complex. The sky is overcast, a dull gray, as if the sun itself refuses to shine upon the building. The walls of the complex are stained with age, the windows dark and hollow like empty sockets. Lillian, a 17-year-old girl with sharp instincts, stands stiffly beside her parents, staring up at their new home. Lillian, narrating, voice filled with unease. The moment I saw the building, I knew something was wrong. I couldn't explain it. It was just a feeling. But it was stronger than anything I'd ever felt before. Mom, excitedly, come on, Lillian. You're gonna love it inside. The space, the view, and finally, your own room. Lillian's hands tremble slightly. She doesn't move. Lillian whispers, barely audible, we shouldn't be here. Dad, scoffing, unlocking the door, oh, come on, Lil. You and your feelings. You watch too many horror movies. As they step inside, a gust of cold air rushes past them, sending a shiver down Lillian's spine. The apartment is spacious but oddly sterile. The furniture is modern but feels lifeless. An unsettling silence lingers, thick and heavy. The air is stale, as if no one has lived here for years. Lillian, internally, whispering it's too quiet, too still. Her gaze drifts down the long hallway leading to the bedrooms. At the very end, a door stands slightly ajar. Dark. Waiting. Watching. That night, Lillian lays awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The apartment is silent. Unnervingly so. Then, she hears it. A soft scraping sound. Like nails dragging against wood. She sits up. The sound is coming from inside her room. Her breath quickens. Slowly, she turns her head toward her closet door. It's slightly open. Lillian whispers, barely audible, no. I closed that before bed. A shadow seems to shift inside. The scraping stops, replaced by an eerie silence that makes her ears ring. Then, bang! The closet door slams shut. Lillian screams and bolts out of bed, scrambling for the door. She bursts into her parents' room, panting. Lillian, frantic, something's in my room. Mom, groggy, annoyed, Lil, what are you talking about? Lillian, on the verge of tears, the closet, it moved. I heard something inside. Her dad sighs, rubbing his face. Dad, irritated, Jesus, Lil. It's a new place. It's probably just the house settling. Go back to bed. Lillian stares at them, her heart pounding. She knows what she heard. What she felt. Over the next few days, the apartment feels different. The silence is no longer just unsettling, it's suffocating. The air is heavier, as if something unseen lingers in every corner, watching. Doors creak open on their own. The television flickers static at random times. The lights dim and brighten as if breathing. And the whispers begin. One night, while brushing her teeth, Lillian glances at the mirror and freezes. Behind her, in the dimly lit hallway, stands a figure. Tall. Motionless. Watching. She spins around, nothing. The hallway is empty. But the air feels wrong. Charged with something unseen but undeniably there. She tries to convince her parents again. Lillian, hesitant but firm. Mom. Dad. We need to leave. Something is in this house. Her parents exchange glances. Mom, sighing, trying to stay calm. Lil, you're scaring yourself. Lillian, desperate, no. You don't understand. It's real. I saw it. I felt it. Dad, sternly enough. We are not leaving because of your imagination. End of discussion. Lillian clenches her jaw. Fine. If they won't listen, she'll prove it. That night, Lillian sets up her phone to record. She aims it at her closet, determined to catch whatever is lurking in her room. She lays in bed, heart pounding. Hours pass. Silence. Then, 3:17 a.m. The air shifts. The closet door, slowly, creaks open. A deep, guttural breath echoes in the room. Lillian is frozen, gripping her blanket. Then, the camera screen flickers. The image distorts. And then, a face. Pale. Hollow eyes. Inches from the camera. Staring. Smiling. The screen cuts to black. Lillian screams. Her parents rush in, but it's too late. The terror has begun. The next morning, Lillian wakes up feeling drained, her body cold with sweat. She grabs her phone to check the recording. She hesitates, then presses play. The screen is dark at first, but then, movement. The closet door creaks open. A shadow spills out, crawling toward the bed, closer and closer, until the screen suddenly goes static. Lillian's hands tremble as she rewinds. And then she sees it, at the very end of the footage, just before the screen cuts out, her own sleeping body in bed, and a hand reaching out from the darkness. Inches away from her face. Lillian, whispering, horrified, "No, no, no, no." The bedroom light flickers. A slow creaking noise fills the room. Lillian stiffens, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her gaze shifts toward the closet. The door is open again. Pitch black screen. Heavy breathing. The sound of fabric rustling. A shaky hand reaches for a bedside lamp. Click. The dim light flickers on, revealing Lillian sitting up in bed, drenched in sweat. Her eyes are locked on her closet. The door is wide open. Her phone, still in her grip, plays the last frame of her recording, the hand reaching for her face. Then, a whisper, soft, raspy, right behind her ear, "You see now." Lillian screams. She spins around, but there's nothing. Just the empty, suffocating air of her room. Her breathing is erratic. Her heart pounds against her ribs. She scrambles for her phone, fumbling to turn on the flashlight, when suddenly, the lamp beside her bed shuts off by itself. The room is plunged into darkness. Silence, but only for a second. Then, from the closet, a slow creaking sound. Something is coming out. Lillian's screams echo through the apartment. Her parents burst into the room, switching on the overhead light. "Dad!" frustrated Lillian. "What the hell is going on?" Lillian is curled against the headboard, panting, pointing at the closet. The door is slightly ajar, but nothing seems out of place. Lillian, shaking, whispering it was here. It was right here. Her mom kneels beside her, gently holding her arms. "Mom," softly, "Lil, sweetie, you're having nightmares. You've been stressed about moving." Lillian snaps, voice rising, "No. I recorded it." She shoves her phone at them, rewinds the footage, and presses play. They watch as the closet door creaks open on its own, and then, right before the video cuts out, the hand reaching for Lillian's face. Mom's face goes pale. Dad's jaw tightens. Dad, hesitant that could be a glitch. A camera distortion. Lillian, whispering, desperate, "Do you really believe that?" Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then, Mom exhales sharply, forcing a smile. "Mom, trying to stay rational, look, tomorrow we'll check the closet, okay? Maybe something fell, or maybe there's a draft from the vents." Lillian doesn't argue. There's no point. They don't understand. Not yet. The next day, Dad inspects the closet. Nothing inside but clothes and shoes. No hidden doors, no vents, no explanation. Dad, firmly, "See?" Nothing. Lillian just stares, but she doesn't argue. That night, things escalate. The TV flickers on by itself, static filling the apartment. The faucets drip thick, murky water. The air turns colder, so cold their breath becomes visible. Mom and Dad can no longer ignore it. And then, the voices start. A whispering chorus. Soft, eerie, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. A child's voice mixed with something deeper. Whisper, echoing, overlapping, "Why didn't you listen? Why didn't you listen?" Dad stiffens. His fingers clench into fists. Then, bang! A cabinet in the kitchen slams open with such force that the hinges snap. Mom lets out a sharp gasp, backing into the counter. They finally look at Lillian. Lillian, deadpan. Now do you believe me? A tense silence. Then, Dad swallows hard. Dad, low, shaken, pack a bag. We're leaving. They start grabbing their things in a rush, stuffing clothes into bags, throwing essentials into a suitcase. But as they move, the air grows heavier. The walls seem to shift, like they're breathing. Then, bam! The front door slams shut on its own. Dad yanks at the knob, but it won't budge. The locks won't turn. Mom pulls at the windows, they won't open either. And then, the lights flicker and go out. Darkness. Then, from the hallway, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving toward them. Mom whispers, shaking, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a child's giggle. Mom lets out a strangled gasp. Lillian clutches her dad's arm, her body shaking violently. And then, the hallway light flickers back on for a second. Just enough to reveal the figure standing at the end of the corridor. A little girl. Or something that looks like one. Head tilted at an unnatural angle. Eyes black, hollow pits. A twisted, unnatural grin stretching across her face. Little girl, soft, sing-song whisper, "You can't leave, you're home now." The light flickers again, and she suddenly inches away. Dad shouts, stumbling backward. Mom lets out a cry. The girl's grin widens, and then the power dies completely. When the lights flicker back on, the apartment is different. The walls look decayed. The air is damp, heavy with a rotten stench. Everything looks aged, as if years have passed in seconds. And the family is no longer standing in their living room. They're in a different room. A place that was never part of the apartment before. The walls are covered in scratch marks, hundreds of them. And at the center of the room, carved into the wood floor, is a single word: stay. Lillian turns to her parents, but their faces are drained of color, their eyes wide with sheer terror. Dad, hoarse whisper, What is this place?" Then, from the shadows, something moves. A shape, taller than the ceiling itself. Long fingers curling against the wall. And then, it speaks. A deep, guttural voice that shakes the very air around them. Entity, whispering, slow, "Inhuman, you were warned." The lights flicker. The walls close in. And then, total darkness. The sound of ragged breathing. Then, a flickering light bulb buzzes to life, revealing Lillian, her parents, and the rotting room around them. The walls, covered in deep scratch marks, seem to pulse like something is alive beneath them. The air is thick with a rancid stench, like decayed flesh. Lillian's dad, his face pale and drenched in sweat, grips his wife's arm. Dad, hoarse, whispering, "We have to get out of here. Now." Lillian stares at the floor, her eyes locked on the word carved into the wood: stay. Then, from the shadows, a deep, guttural breath. The room seems to exhale. Entity, whispering, slow, "Inhuman, you were warned." The air vibrates with the voice. Lillian's mom gasps, stepping back, only to freeze, her body stiff, her breath hitching in her throat. Her eyes widen in terror. Behind her, long, gnarled fingers curl around her shoulder. Lillian's stomach lurches. Lillian, screaming, "MOM! Run!" The hand tightens and yanks her mother into the darkness. She disappears. No scream. No sound. Just gone. Dad lunges forward, screaming her name. "Dad, desperate Jane! Jane!" His voice echoes, swallowed by the suffocating silence. Lillian grabs his arm, yanking him back. Lillian, panting, frantic, "We can't stay here. We have to move." The walls tremble. The ceiling creaks. The space around them seems to stretch and shift, like the apartment is twisting into something else. Then, from the hallway, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Not human. Lillian grabs her dad's hand, dragging him toward the door. Lillian whispers, desperate, "Come on, come on." She grabs the knob and pulls. The door won't budge. Dad pushes against it, groaning, trying to force it open. Dad, gritted teeth, panicked, "It's locked. It's..." Then, from behind them, her mother's voice, soft, distant, "Wrong." Mom, whispering, "Lillian, help me." Lillian whirls around. Her mom stands in the hallway. Or something that looks like her. Her body is stiff, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Her eyes, completely black. And she's smiling. Mom, soft, Eerie, come with me, sweetheart. Dad's breath catches. He instinctively steps in front of Lillian. Dad, shaking his head, whispering that's not her. Lillian's entire body trembles. Her mother's expression doesn't change. Then, the lights flicker violently. A loud, inhuman screech pierces the air. The thing wearing her mother's face lunges. Dad grabs Lillian and shoves her away, just as the entity slams into him, sending him crashing against the wall. The impact is sickening. A loud crack echoes through the apartment. Lillian screams. Lillian, crying out, Dad. He slumps to the floor, unmoving. The creature turns its head toward Lillian. The twisted smile widens. Mom, soft, teasing, almost time to stay forever. Then, it rushes at her. Lillian turns and runs. She dashes down the warped hallway, her breath ragged. The apartment around her is changing. The walls stretch, the ceiling warps, doors appear and vanish as if the entire place is alive. And behind her, the footsteps. Pounding. Chasing. Getting closer. She spots the front door ahead. It's open. Her pulse skyrockets. She sprints toward it, lungs burning, every instinct screaming, almost there, almost. Then, slam. The door shuts just as she reaches it. Lillian grabs the knob and pulls with everything she has. It won't move. A whisper directly behind her. Entity, rasping, delighted, nowhere to run. Cold breath caresses the back of her neck. Lillian clenches her teeth, refusing to turn around. Then, she remembers. Her phone. The recording. The evidence that the entity hates. Hands trembling, she yanks her phone from her pocket, scrolling frantically to the video, the one that caught the shadow, the face, the hand. She presses play. The screen flickers to life. The closet door opening. The shadow shifting. The hand. The room around her shudders violently. The entity screeches, its voice a guttural, twisted howl. The walls crack. The air warps. Lillian feels a force yanking at her, trying to pull her into the floor, into the walls, into the apartment itself. Lillian, screaming, desperate and oh. Let me go! The video keeps playing. The entity shrieks, its form flickering, breaking apart, like static. The walls tremble. The air collapses in on itself. And then, a blinding flash. When Lillian opens her eyes, she's lying outside. On the pavement. In front of the apartment complex. The air is normal. No more whispers. No more wrongness. Her hands are scraped. Her heart is pounding. She looks around frantically. Then, she sees her dad, groaning, clutching his ribs, eyes wide with shock. She sobs and rushes to him, helping him sit up. Dad, shaking, whispering, Lillian, where's your mother? Lillian freezes. Her stomach drops. She turns toward the building. The windows are black. Hollow. Empty. And then, just for a second, she sees it. A silhouette in the window. A familiar figure. Her mother. Her mom's face presses against the glass. Her black eyes stare down at them. And she smiles. Then, the entire apartment complex flickers, like a dying light bulb, before disappearing into the darkness. Lillian and her father never found the apartment again. It was as if it had never existed. They filed a missing persons report for her mother. No trace. No records of the apartment lease. No proof they had ever lived there. But Lillian knows the truth. The apartment took her. And it's still out there, waiting. For its next tenants. Total darkness. The sound of rain. Heavy breathing. A match strikes, flick, and a small flame illuminates Lillian's face. Her eyes are bloodshot, her skin pale. She's shivering. Her dad sits beside her, his hand pressed to his bruised ribs. They're in a cramped motel room, the only light coming from the dim yellow lamp on the nightstand. The silence between them is heavy, thick with something unsaid. Dad, soft, or she's still out there. Lillian doesn't respond. She just stares at her phone, scrolling through old pictures of her mom. Her fingers tremble. Then, bang. A loud knock on the motel door. Both of them freeze. Another bang, Harder this time. Muffled voice, urgent, familiar, it's me. Open the door. Lillian's stomach lurches. Her dad scrambles to his feet, almost tripping over himself. Dad, whispering, frantic Jane? He rushes to the door, his hands shaking as he unlocks it and yanks it open. And there, standing in the pouring rain, is Mom. Dripping wet, barefoot, and shivering. Her eyes are wide, her lips slightly parted, her breath ragged. She looks different. Lillian's breath catches in her throat. Dad reaches for her, his voice breaking. Dad, whispering Jane, my God. But something isn't right. The way she stands. The way she breathes. Her movements are stiff, almost like she's not used to being in her own body. Then, very slowly, she tilts her head. And smiles. Inside the motel room, Lillian sits on the bed, watching as her father wraps their mother in a towel, fussing over her like a man desperate to wake up from a nightmare. Dad, soft, relieved, where were you? How did you get out? Mom just blinks. Her expression is off. Too calm. Her eyes, darker than before, slowly shift toward Lillian. Lillian stiffens under the gaze. Then, her mother smiles. The same twisted grin from the apartment. Mom, softly, I missed you, sweetheart. Lillian's entire body goes cold. She doesn't answer. She doesn't even breathe. Something deep in her gut screams that this isn't her mother. But Dad doesn't see it. He won't see it. He pulls Mom into his arms, his body shaking. Dad, whispering, emotional, I thought I lost you. Mom doesn't hug him back immediately. She hesitates, like she's learning. Then, slowly, she lifts her arms and presses them around his back. Her nails dig into his skin. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make Lillian notice. Later that night, Lillian lies awake in the motel bed, listening. Watching. Her mother is standing by the window. Perfectly still. Staring out at the rain. Her dad is asleep, breathing heavily beside her. Lillian's heart pounds. She knows. She knows this isn't right. Something followed them. Something escaped with them. Then, Mom's head tilts unnaturally. Her breathing stops. For a long, long time. Too long for a human. And then, in the absolute silence of the room, Mom slowly turns her head, eyes locking onto Lillian. Like she knew she was being watched. Mom, soft, eerie whisper, why aren't you sleeping, sweetheart? Lillian's throat goes dry. She forces herself to swallow, forces herself to act normal. Lillian, whispering, I just can't. Mom smiles. Then, she turns back toward the window. A long pause. And then, in the quietest voice imaginable, Mom, whispering, almost playful, you never should have left. Lillian's heart stops. She doesn't move. Doesn't blink. She knows, with absolute certainty, this thing is not her mother. The next morning, Lillian searches for proof. Something, anything, to convince her father that this isn't real. That Mom isn't Mom. And then, she notices it. Her mother's feet. Bare. But clean. No cuts. No dirt. No sign that she had been wandering for days. No proof that she even walked here. It's like she just appeared. Lillian's breath quickens. She turns toward her father, who's sitting at the tiny motel table, his head in his hands. He looks exhausted. Broken. Lillian, urgent, whispering, Dad. Look at her feet. He blinks, confused. Lillian, more frantic, she was in the apartment. Trapped. Running for days. But there's nothing on her feet. No cuts, no dirt, no bruises. Does that make sense to you? Dad frowns, his gaze slowly shifting toward their mother. She's sitting on the bed, staring blankly at the motel TV. For the first time, doubt flickers across his face. Then, Mom turns her head toward them. Her dark eyes shining. Mom, softly, what are you two whispering about? Lillian tenses. Her dad swallows hard. Dad, quiet, hesitant Jane, how did you get out? Silence. Then, Mom smiles. Mom, too calm, too steady, the apartment let me go. Lillian's blood runs ice cold. Because they both know, the apartment never lets anyone go. Lillian wakes up with a gasp, her chest heaving. Her body jerks upright, drenched in cold sweat. For a moment, she's disoriented until she sees the car's dashboard lights flickering in the darkness. Her father grips the steering wheel, his face pale and eyes bloodshot. The engine is still running. They've stopped at the side of a deserted road. Lillian, whispering, "Horse, Dad?" He doesn't respond. Just stares ahead, lost in thought. Then, after a long silence, he speaks. "Dad," soft, broken. She's still in there. Lillian swallows hard, her throat dry. Lillian, whispering, "I know." They sit in silence, the weight of that truth pressing down on them. They left the apartment. But the real mom never did. The thing that followed them wasn't her. It was something else. And now, they have to go back. The return to the apartment. The drive back feels endless. The sun barely peeks through the heavy clouds as they reach the street where their nightmare began. The apartment looms ahead, lifeless, hollow, waiting. A chill runs down Lillian's spine. The windows are dark. No movement. No signs of life. But she knows something is watching. They step out of the car, moving cautiously toward the entrance. Every instinct in Lillian's body screams to turn back, but she pushes forward. For Mom. For the truth. The hallway is just as they left it, long, narrow, and eerily silent. The door to their unit stands slightly ajar. A low hum vibrates through the walls. They step inside. The apartment is different now. The furniture is coated in dust, the air thick and stale. It feels abandoned. But they can sense her. "Dad," calling out, voice cracking. "Jane?" Silence. Then, a faint noise. From the bedroom. Lillian moves first, heart pounding. She grips her father's hand as they push the door open. And there, in the corner of the room, is Mom. Her real mother. Weak. Pale. Eyes sunken. But alive. She blinks, slowly lifting her head as if waking from a deep, endless sleep. "Mom," whispering, voice hoarse, "you came back." Lillian chokes on a sob, rushing forward, throwing her arms around her mother. Her father follows, his entire body trembling as he kneels beside them. "Dad," voice breaking. "Jane, my God." Mom clings to them, her frail fingers gripping desperately. Then, the room shifts. The walls breathe. The air thickens. A low, guttural growl rumbles from the shadows. They're not alone. Lillian grips her mother's arm, yanking her up. "Lillian, urgent, we have to go. Now." Her dad pulls Mom up, supporting her as they stumble toward the door. Behind them, the shadows move. The thing that wore Mom's face is still here. And it's angry. A horrific screech fills the apartment, making their ears ring. The walls shake violently. The door slams shut, trapping them inside. Dad, frantic, pulling at the door handle, it won't open. Lillian turns and sees it. The figure stands at the far end of the room, taller now. Twisted. Its face shifting, morphing between different forms. It lunges. Lillian grabs a lamp and hurls it. The bulb shatters against the creature's face, making it screech in agony. That's when she sees it, the mirror. Something deep in her gut knows. The apartment is a prison. The only way out is through it. Lillian, shouting the mirror. "Break it!" Her father doesn't hesitate. He lifts a chair and smashes the mirror into pieces. The apartment shudders. The air cracks. And suddenly, everything collapses in on itself. The walls peel away like paper. The creature lets out a final, deafening shriek as it is sucked into the void. And then, silence. The door swings open. The nightmare is over. They don't stop running until they reach the car. No one speaks. No one looks back. They drive in silence, leaving the apartment, the horror, behind forever. Hours later, they pull into a quiet suburban neighborhood. A small, cozy house with sunlight streaming through the windows awaits them. Mom sits on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Her hands still tremble, but she's there. She's real. Lillian sits beside her, gripping her hand tightly. "Mom," soft, "grateful you saved me." Lillian smiles, though her eyes are still haunted. Lillian, whispering, "I almost lost you." Her father enters the room, carrying 3 mugs of tea. He sets them down and takes a seat, his gaze heavy. Dad, softly, we'll never ignore you again, Lillian. She nods, squeezing her mother's hand. Outside, the sun sets. Their new home is warm, safe, real. But in the distance, in the deepest corners of her mind, Lillian still hears the whispers. And she knows, some things never truly let go. As the family settles in, the camera slowly pans out, moving through the house, then drifting into the street, farther and farther away, until it reaches a dark, empty lot. The apartment is gone. But the land where it stood? Still cursed. The end.